Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tiff Talks Tech. Today, I'm excited because I'm joined by Angela Flick, who is the founder of Why Not Strategic Concepts. And today, we're going to be talking about the power of asking the right questions and how to transform your partnerships. I think there's so much we can gain from vendor partners and operators working well together, and I would love to just kind of dive into that. But before we do, Angela, can you share a little bit about your background and what you do?
Yeah. Hi. Well, and thanks for having me. I'm super excited to have this conversation today. So I'm Angela Flick, as Tiff mentioned, and I'm the founder of Why Not Strategic Concepts, which is a strategic coaching and consulting firm. And so I come from almost 20 years in the corporate operations side of the property management industry, and recently decided to move into a consulting and coaching role on my own. I just saw such an opportunity in the industry for different kinds of conversations to happen and that are needed to push us into kind of that next stage and next phase of growth and innovation and operating differently. And so that's what I'm excited to do, is to bring to life those opportunities.
Yeah, I love that. So I know when you and I talked before, we talked a little bit about design thinking, and that's actually something I'd never heard of. But I want to talk about it and how we could even apply it in our industry.
Yeah. So design thinking is something that I stumbled upon a few years ago. I was doing some additional research in how to look at innovation differently and how to create strategy differently. And design thinking, its origin is in product creation. So if you were an inventor and you wanted to create a new widget or fidget or whatever, you would use a design thinking process to say, okay, what am I creating? Who is it for? And you would go through this ideate and iterate, prototype, test kind of cycle. And in the recent decade or so, they've realized that you can use design thinking strategy and methodologies to significantly impact how corporate structures work, how you operate, how you create strategy. And so I took courses through IDEO. They're one of the largest consulting firms for innovation really in the world. And they offer a certification program for design thinking. And so I took that. And so I have my advanced certification in advanced design thinking. And it's really fascinating to understand how important that has become in the world of innovating and creating strategy. And I looked up a stat just to share with you because I thought this was fascinating, because I said it's helpful for people to understand like where and how this is impacting the job market and the general economy. So from 2018 to 2022, there was a 350% increase in job postings that were requiring design thinking or preferring design thinking to be a necessary skill. So just a huge increase. And those were all really being found not in product management, but in corporate strategy roles. And salaries that have design thinking as a requirement are 24% higher.
Wow.
So than those that don't, of similar roles. So it's just something that's becoming more and more important to innovate and solve problems.
I love that. I think that is something we need to learn how to do as an industry, and definitely on both sides. Are there ways that you see today that we need to bridge the gap between property management companies and vendor partners?
Yes. So I think the biggest opportunity is I always call it like translating. So we don't speak each other's speak. So I used to tell my suppliers, we don't know on the operator side what we don't know. So we don't know what questions to ask. The suppliers always say, just let me know if you need something, or let me know if something's not working for you. Reach out if you can't figure something out. But sometimes it seems like everything's working. But we don't know what we don't know. So please tell me what we don't know. And I think there's a fear in that, right? There's a fear on the supplier side to say, oh, like, well, maybe they don't want me to show them this, or maybe they don't want me to point out that they might not know, they might not be doing it the right way. But that partnership and translation and asking each other relevant questions, I think, is going to be key in long-term successful partnerships.
Yeah, I know I've shared this before, but I remember I had a boss, and she always said to me, you don't have to know how to do everything, but you need to know who to go to figure it out. And that's where we would rely on our vendor partners quite often because we wanted them to be the expert in whatever it is we were using them for so that they could help guide us in what would be the best choices to make.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
definitely.
100%.
I want to dive into this from two different sides a little bit. And
Okay.
I think first I want to jump into the vendor side and like how as vendors and suppliers can you best serve your property management customers in a way that is authentic and can really give them the most value while also doing what we need to do. And so let's jump into that a little bit. In your experience, what are some of the most effective questions that vendors can ask property management teams to really understand their needs? And I know this can vary by whatever product you're selling, but are there things that are pretty general that we can be asking?
Percent. And I think you're right. Kind of maybe the first or second questions or the way that you ask questions can be a little different based on your product type. But I think there are some foundational questions that, or curiosities, sorry, excuse me, that curiosities that suppliers can have about a management company when they're going in. First and foremost, I think it's super important to understand what is the current biggest challenge that's facing that management company. Because a supplier typically will go and approach the management company and assume that what they're selling will solve the biggest problem or the fact that what they're selling solves a problem. They try to force almost, I don't know if that's the right word, but force almost the management company to believe that that's their biggest problem. And so I think instead it's going to them in a partnered effort to say, can we just talk about your business? Like what's going on right now? What's really like impacting your culture? What's really impacting the stress levels, the burnout levels? What's impacting your revenue right now? And really listen and connect the dots. And so if you can't connect the dots yourself, because I know a lot of people are very linear and so they hear things in boxes. Well, if you can't connect the dots, AI does that now.
That
Write
is a
down the
great
dot.
point.
Tell it right.
That is a great point.
Right? Like put your notes into something and say, hey, help me AI, like help me identify like what is the key challenge here. There's so many tools now that can help people that there's no excuse anymore to say like, oh, I didn't really realize that that's what they were saying. But really it's understanding and then asking them how they can be a good partner in that moment. So I think that really at the fundamental level is the most important thing that a supplier can ask a management company.
Yeah, definitely about asking, what do you need? How can I help you? I
Yeah.
think I would get so frustrated being on the operator side when vendor partners would be just so focused on themselves and not really listening to what we have to say. And I think overall it's going to help you in your business if you can sit down and listen and really take that in.
Absolutely. That's part of why I love coaching. I got my life coaching certification because why don't I need 5 million certifications apparently? Different things.
And
I'm a lifelong learner. I have my life coaching certification and coaching, that's what coaching is all about, right? So it's all about asking questions and active listening to help people draw conclusions. And I think that the sales environment in our industry today could learn a lot from coaching methodologies instead of push sales, informational. It's more partnership, active listening, coaching mentalities.
yes, exactly. I think that's going to change things completely when we can figure out how to add value rather than just what's in it for us, what's in it for us.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So what role does understanding their metrics for success play in developing that meaningful partnership and understanding the KPIs that they're looking at?
Yes, I love that question. And I think that with the growth of business intelligence and data management inside the management companies are getting smarter. So, my background originally in the industry was in marketing. And so I can use a couple of marketing examples here. An ILS can go to a management company and say, yep, you need to upgrade your listing or you need to pay more for this because look at how many conversions you're getting. And the management company looks at their data. In the old days, they would say, oh, okay, well, my data is not really showing me anything, so I guess we'll just go off your data. And now they are way more educated. And so I think going in and asking if I'm going to stick with the ILS example. If the ILS goes to the management company and says, hey, what are you using to mark conversions? What are you using to speculate on multi-source attribution? Right? If the management company has no clue, that's a really great opportunity, like you were just saying, for education and partnership and saying, hey, let's look at like how the rest of the industry is doing this right now. Not, well, here's our proprietary secret formula calculation that shows you a fake number. And I believe it's not necessarily a fake number, but it's a made up number, right? It's a made up number based on a calculation that they felt will create that sense of urgency in the management company instead of partnering with the management company. So I think it's important to say, hey, let's look at like why that could work or why that couldn't work and what you're doing. And here are some numbers that we can provide that can help actually lead you to an answer. And here's again why that's important. Like I think it's always going back to the why. And if it's not a number that is important to the management company in that moment, they might not be ready for it. So understanding that there are management companies that are slowly kind of coming on board with some of the data, and some management companies that still are looking at cost per lease only, right? Or they're looking at days to turn apartments, right? What are the most important metrics to them? Understanding that and why, and not forcing extra data down their throat, but instead maybe guiding them towards why they might want to consider that as an important metric.
Yeah, definitely. So I know you do a lot of coaching as well. Do you have any examples of when a vendor's questions have really led to a great breakthrough or improvement of that partnership?
So, I'm just getting started on this in this realm, right? So I left my operations position just 4 months ago, which is still so crazy to me. And what's been fascinating to me in my conversations with suppliers so far is those aha moments when they realize, gosh, like that is why I should be worried about that, right? Because I'll hear things about, this is why we want our product to do this, or there's a reason or a method to our madness, right? To create the product in this way or to focus on these things first. And so my question to them is, okay, well, why? Why? Give them space to really think about it and then say, okay, let's bring it back. If you are an accountant working for a property management company, and these are your 3 daily priorities, and then you force this different thing in your product to make them have to circumvent their daily priorities, that's going to create angst for those accountants, right? And that's going to create frustration. And even though the piece that you have probably works really great, it's not working for those accountants. And so they're going to have a negative energy about your product, which is then going to sour the opinions with the decision makers. So you really have to make sure that the product matches what is actually happening, not just what your idea of what's happening out there. And so I think those so far in coaching, in a coaching method has been the best, is to see people go, I have to ask, like me asking them to ask questions about like, well, what does your day-to-day look like? What would be most important to you? And then really going after those features first.
Yeah, that's a great point, especially when it comes to like training that team on the product that they're using. I mean, finding out what's most important to them, what are they going to use the most? This is how you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Are there any misconceptions about that vendors might have about property management teams or vice versa?
I think the biggest misconceptions are that the property management companies are staffed adequately, manage and implement technology. Maybe it's not an assumption that they're making. Maybe it's just, I think there are some cases where they know the management companies aren't staffed adequately, but they don't fix that, so they just say, well, we'll just keep selling your technology. But I think that the assumption is that, oh, well, they will just buy our product and figure it out. And I think that that's dangerous. I think that leads to really difficult relationships. I think it leads to frustration. I think it leads to a lot more payroll being spent on those difficult conversations than needs to be. Because if you just start from a partnership perspective, and if the supplier, especially in the tech space, understands that what is actually necessary to implement and maintain and manage their product, and they're super honest, overly transparent about that, then from the beginning, then the management company can take responsibility from that point. But I think the problem is that they're assuming that the management company just understands that they're going to have to figure out how to implement train, maintain everything on the tech side. And that's just not the case.
Yeah, I remember when I was on the property management side, I think I may have talked about this before too, but I was tasked with finding a bot for our properties. And so I decided to A/B test two different products. And one was implementation within like 2 or 3 days. And they did everything for us. It was super easy. It took me like 10, 15 minutes to get everything together. And then the other one was like a 50-page thing that I had to fill out per property. It took me like an hour per property, set up like 3 on the test, and it took me forever. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to do this times 70. I don't have the time or the bandwidth to do this. This is just not going to cut it. So I think if I would have known that up front, I would have, let's not do this pilot because this is
Yeah.
craziness. So, I
100%.
think
And if there's any salespeople that have worked with me in the past year, they might have PTSD from this statement, but I was like, if you send me one more workbook to fill out, one more Excel workbook, I might lose my mind.
Yeah.
I literally might lose it. And then if you ask me to complete a workbook with information that I know you already have, like the property's address.
Yeah. Just look at our website. You can get like,
no, we're done. Yeah. I mean, it's really like, through even those processes, it's like understanding that you have to approach it in a way that's a partnership way. Yes, you need that information, but you have to make it easy for people to do business with you. Their priority is not filling out your workbook. So,
I mean, so many portfolios, they're larger portfolios, and you have to do everything times however many properties you have. So really think about that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, definitely. So in what ways can understanding property management teams' long-term goals really help vendors provide more strategic and future-proof solutions moving forward?
That's a excellent question. I think that there's a couple of things. One is understanding if they've already purchased the product. So if a management company has already purchased the product, really partnering well with them when you add or update features. And so a lot of the tech companies send out like, oh, here's our product development pipeline, or here's our feature updates via an email, or it's in a blog type format. I'm going to tell you right now, the management companies aren't reading that. They're not, and they don't understand. Maybe 99% of them are not reading it. I shouldn't say no one. There's no definites, right? But for the majority, they don't understand how that feature update maybe impacts their portfolio or impacts their business model or impacts their day-to-day. And so I think really partnering with them and saying, hey, like this feature's coming. Here's like when it's coming, and here's how it will impact how you use the product. And yes, that does take some time, but that's where that partnership comes in. And I'm sure one day there will be a technology that will help that process maybe. But for now, I think it's necessary if someone's already using the product to help them, guide them through those feature updates as they come. And if they're not already using the product, I think it's important to help them know, or they should know, the suppliers should know and understand kind of what their first priorities are. If it's doing something different, so if it's focused on a maintenance or a landscaping, let's say, and they are a marketing technology or an office management technology, they should be patient and they should know like, okay, I need to let them get through that maintenance or landscaping priority first, stay in touch, understand like, when the company's ready, and then help them plan in their roadmap how to implement their service to support the next priority and timeline that out. It can help with budgeting that way. It can help with strategic planning, future proofing, right? Their next steps and their next priorities.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember there were businesses that I could think of that we would ask them, what's coming next? What's new? And they would be, oh, nothing. It's all the same. It's all good. And then we would ask them about certain features and they would say, oh, well, we've had that. And we would be going, oh my gosh, why didn't you tell us about this? Like we want communication on what's new in your product.
Yes, I have, without using specifics, I have an example where for 2 years, we were asking a provider about something very specific, like it was not a vague, ambiguous type ask. And then we get on a meeting and they had hired a new product person for a particular segment of their organization who said, oh, we have this great tool that can do X, Y, and Z. I'm a super even keel person and I got angry because I was like, wait, how long has this been in place? And they said, oh, like 2 years. And I was like,
excuse me.
We've been asking for 2 years
Yeah,
for this
no,
exact thing.
yeah,
So, I mean,
yeah.
those are the kinds of things that are happening every day in the industry and I think, it's hard for people to be honest about the challenges and the difficulties. And I think that's also one of the reasons why I'm like, you know what? I want to go out on my own because I want to be honest.
Yeah,
I know when you're in,
there's both sides of it too. Like if you think of, I've been on both sides. So thinking of the vendor side, sometimes you're being told one thing by product, it's coming, and so you're telling clients it's coming because that's what you
yep,
understand, and there might be a delay, and it's not your fault, but now you have to go answer for that. So it can be really tough being in the middle of that. And so
absolutely.
take it easy
Absolutely.
on
So
your
that's a good
vendors.
point to say the supplier side should consider their structure too. Their structure and how communication is getting out and people are getting updated. That's a great point.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So, on that note, what impact does open communication and feedback from property management teams have on the vendor's approach and product development?
Yeah. Okay. Like as you talk about product development,
Let's talk more about it.
I think that the idea that in general management companies have the same types of tasks, they have the same types of activities, and they just implement them a little differently. But in general, the boxes or the buckets, whatever you might call them, are similar, are the same. So everybody has to monitor rent, everybody has to have employee engagement, everybody has to have marketing, everybody has these same buckets. And so, my last management company, we were a smaller management company, just over 5,000 units. And we used to say to our suppliers, like, I can't imagine we're the first ones to ever ask you about
Mhm.
this. Like, we're a
Yeah.
small company. Like, are we actually the first to ever ask for this? And because we would get all the time, oh, nobody's ever asked for that, or we've never heard that before. Okay, so maybe ask your other clients, or maybe like actually put together like an active advisory board, or maybe like seek the input of your clients. Like, who's actually defining the development pipeline? Because if it's the product team in the tech company doing it in a silo outside of partnership with management companies, then it's not happening in the right way. And if it's only coming from their venture backers, the venture capital firms that are funding them, that's not coming from the right place either. So somebody needs to get more educated in that space about like what is actually going to be the most impactful thing to add to the pipeline. Because
Start
it's
making
not
a
usually,
note,
yeah.
requests, and marking who said it just so you
Yeah.
can know and have it. You need to listen to your clients.
Yeah, and it is, I understand the side of the suppliers saying, sometimes there are features that they, are more expensive for them to build out or there's a heavier load. So they try to go after the smaller, cheaper things first. And sometimes I think that's a really great approach, right? You have to like get the little ones out so you can work on the bigger ones. But sometimes those bigger ones, are ones that are going to keep somebody with you. So I've definitely had situations where I'm like, gosh, if you guys can't fix this, like we have to fix this, we have to fix this, we have to fix this. And they're like, we're trying, but we just have all these other little things that we have to get out first. And finally, you just are like, I'm sorry, we can't wait any longer. We have to cancel. Right. And so so they have to weigh like, am I going to lose clients over this and lose revenue? Or should I invest a little bit more upfront and not lose that revenue? So I think those are the kinds of questions too that they have to be asking inside.
Yeah. And it almost makes you feel like when you get that response, I totally get it, but it makes you feel like your request is not as important as all these little ones. Okay, well then,
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, we've got teams begging us. So usually if you're the person working with the supplier, you have dozens, if not hundreds of people who are using that tool begging you to fix it, and so you're going to the product saying, please just fix it, just fix it. And it's for sure up to the operators to make sure that they're asking for appropriate things, right? That they're not asking for something fluffy or something that there's an easy workaround for that they just don't want to deal with, right? That they're actually being constructive and strategic in their requests too.
yeah, definitely.
Hmm.
So I want to kind of flip the conversation a little bit and talk about things from the operator side.
Okay.
So from the property management perspective, what are questions that they could ask their vendor partners to get what they need out of the partnership?
Yeah. So I think understanding what the product solution, the whole solution is.
Hmm.
And I think that that means don't just go to a supplier and say, I need something that can close work orders automatically. That's all I want. That's all I want is something that can close work orders, right? I think the operators need to be open to understanding an entire infrastructure of technology. So if you look at application management or like enterprise architecture techniques, and for any companies out there that are hiring CTOs or technology group departments, they'll understand what this means is that if you're looking at your tech stack in a way that actually incorporates the entire stack and how each piece affects each other or impacts each other, then you'll know to say to a supplier, or you should know to say to a supplier, okay, I need something that can close work orders, but I understand that your product may be able to plug into our stack and help us in multiple ways. Can you help us identify what that would look like? Right?
Mm.
Because I think often we say, nope, I'm so focused right now on closing work orders. That's my task. That's my priority of the day. So all I want to hear about is your work orders.
Mm.
So they kind of shut themselves down. I think too, it's partly because this industry is tired of like the sales process. They're like, okay, if I go in and get out,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So it's like, hey, like being transparent and saying, I don't have, this is my problem right now, but if you can help me in a partnership productive way, I'd really like to understand how you will actually plug into my tech stack. And we have and stop like saying, does it integrate? Does it integrate? Does it integrate? Because half the time the management company team members don't understand what that means either, the full scope of what integration means. And so I think it's actually saying, how do you plug into my tech stack? And how does it work? And how does it help us all be successful?
Right. I mean, usually you've done your research to begin with when you're talking to a vendor. I know even myself, I'm very introverted, so I'm not going to go talk to a vendor unless I already have done that research and I'm the person that goes to the trade show floor and looks at the ground so we don't make eye contact.
I flip my name tag around a lot and do the same thing because I'm like, I can't. I just want
I'm
to go
like,
talk to who.
don't, I'll let you know if I want your product, I will
Yeah.
tell you.
Because I can't say no to people either.
Yes, yes, that's the other thing. And that's kind of what I want to dive into also
Yeah.
because there's also this, I hate saying no. After I've done my research, I've talked to my people, and one of the things that I would always default to is, oh, well, we didn't have budget. And then the vendor would come back and say, oh, well, here's a new price. And I'm like, shoot, that's not really it. Like, how
Yes.
are some ways that we can be honest with our vendors and not worry about hurting their feelings? I think I kind of know now being on the vendor side, like, oh, it's not really hurting their feelings. You're just being honest and they'll
Yeah.
stop billing to you. But it can be so hard in the moment to say no.
Totally. So this is something that so in the product, like if I'm face to face with you and you're like, hey, like at a trade show and you're like, hey, like come to my booth and talk to me and can we schedule a meeting? I'm like, it's like I can't. I'm a connector that way. I'm an extrovert with an introverted side, right? So
Yeah.
I get too overwhelmed in the trade shows with people pulling, right? And so that's why I do that where I flip my. They started
Yeah.
making them double sided. Did you know that? They're
Oh,
actually double
man,
sided now. Mhm. It's the worst.
that's kind of terrible.
Now everybody knows my trick, so that I said it out loud. But when it comes to like I'm going through the process with a vendor, I feel really confident in how kind of I had someone tell me once, they're like, do you just enjoy telling, this is going to sound terrible, but she was being a little sarcastic. She said, do you just enjoy telling vendors that their products, or that their products aren't good? And I was like, no, I was like, that's not what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Right. But it's my job to be ahead of like what that product's doing and the need for it and what the solution is. Right. And so I think what a lot of management companies get stuck in is that like, okay, wait, I needed a solution. This really doesn't fit. But I'm going to say yes because like I don't want to ruin the relationship. Or I've known that salesperson for 15 years, or, oh, when I was a community manager, they were my leasing agent and now they're selling me a widget, right? So I have to maintain that. I think it's I think it was like Dare to Lead. Brene Brown talks about and in a couple of her other books too, she talks about being kind versus being nice. And that really like hit me where I was like, that's exactly how I am, is I'm just nice. Like I will say things that will be like, oh, like, that's so great. And in my mind, I'm like, this is terrible. Right.
Yeah.
So I've taught myself to like to be, if I'm going to be kind, I'm going to tell you why that probably won't work or it's not a really great idea right now. And I try to follow it up with here's why and here's what maybe you could do, add to your product that would make it amazing for us. And yes, that might not be the case for every management company, and there are management companies out there that will say, yes, I'll take your point solution, even though I have to add 10 other point solutions to make it work. Right?
Yeah.
But I've gotten to the point where I'm like, hey, like you have a point solution, and to make my job work or my team's job work, the efficiency and the value will come when you can add these next 3 items.
Yeah.
Right? When you've added those 3 items, or you can help us figure out the best way to incorporate that, then let's talk again.
Yeah.
Right.
The
So it's
other
never like
thing,
a no. It's more of a like, hey, go back to the drawing board. And maybe when you are a little further along, we can talk.
totally.
Yeah.
The other thing Brene Brown says is that being clear is being kind. And I
Yes.
think that's so important because being on the vendor side, like it's a whole new world for me. Like I would give that excuse, oh, we can't afford it right now.
Yeah.
Or
They're
I'm
like,
just
we can pay for free for the first 6 months. And you're like,
yeah, I know. But I think now being on the vendor side, we want to know so that one, we can stop trying to sell to you if you have a solution or it's not the right time or whatever, we're not going to keep bugging you. And
yeah,
two, I mean, we just want to know for ourselves, like, did you like another solution more? Okay, how can we improve our product so we can compete and just everybody can get better at the same time? We just want to know those little things for our own knowledge, not because we're like, well, why didn't you?
exactly. Exactly. It's not about, it's not mean. You're not being mean or you're not like being like catty about it. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, just be clear and like, oh, it's because you didn't have this feature and this company did, and that's it.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah. Can you give me a good example? Like if it really is a budget thing and we really can't afford your product, what's a good example of something that you could say that's just, I don't know, money is such an uncomfortable topic. And even though it's not your own money, it's the company's money, like, is there a great way that you can say that?
Yeah. I love what you said about clarity. Right. So I think it's being super clear and saying, like, hey, like for your product, this is, we're paying right now, we're paying $2 a unit a year, I don't know, for that particular product. And yes, the value that you do enhance the value a little bit if we were to switch to your product, but the value to us is not equivalent. If let's say you're trying to charge us $10 a unit a year, right? The value to us isn't equitable, right? So we can't afford that move right now. And I try to be honest about like the things that we're looking at internally. We are focused right now on cutting costs in these categories. And unfortunately, like, even though you're not in that category, like until we can cut costs in those categories, we can't afford to add in this category. And it's really, I think, being, clear about it's not personal, never personal. And that we have a budget to hit the same way they have a quota to hit, right? And so it's pretty significant, to our investors and our owners if we don't hit our budget. And I think the more honesty we start to create in that conversation, the easier it will hopefully get for people.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good way for suppliers to try to assess their price points more before they go to market.
Exactly. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think there's a difference between a salesperson just trying to save the sale and actually trying to do what they can do to help you. Like there's that fine line.
Yeah.
Definitely. So do you have any advice for property management teams when they are evaluating what vendors that they're going to use? Are there questions? Sorry, I said that really funny. I'm going to re-ask that question. I like went really roundabout on that one.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for property management teams to effectively evaluate and select vendors based on the kind of questions that the vendor is asking?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's if the vendor is asking you is asking you to have maybe your implementation team meet with their implementation team. Or if the vendor is partnering with you to address what training means, because I think that's another area that gets snuck into a sales presentation. Yes, we train our product, and then they don't, or there's very limited training, or there's, they'll train your trainer, but they won't train your teams, So there's things like that I think are really important for the management companies to actually get solid examples of what that would look like. Ask for, roadmap, calendars, timelines, be very specific. So if the management company has created an internal implementation process, it's almost like overlay the supplier's implementation process to your implementation process and see where there's gaps. And make sure that you're identifying like, okay, there's this gap in what we expect. Did we just miss it, when you were giving us your implementation process? Or is this something that you actually don't do? And that's important because then you can decide as a management company whether or not that gap is worth having to overcome or make up for or not, and give them that feedback. And the other piece is, I saw someone on LinkedIn the other day post, and they'll know who they are if they hear this, but they posted like the top, like the order of the things that they think all the salespeople in the industry should know. You may have seen it. And the number one thing that he put on there was know the product. And I was like shouting from the rooftops. I was so excited to see that on a salesperson's post, because I hear all the time, well, I'm just sales, so I don't really understand. I really don't know like all the back end of the product. And I'm like, okay, so I'm over, like previously, right? Like I was over, my department was marketing, IT, and property systems. So I have 4 departments, and I could tell you how almost every single product works. Like I could tell you how it plugs in. So if I can do that with all of these products, you have to learn your products. Like you have to. You have to be able to answer questions, because it wastes everyone's time for the
Get
sales.
somebody on the call with you who can answer it.
Yeah, exactly. For you to say, oh, well, let's schedule a call with this team. And then you have another question. And then they say, oh, well, let's schedule another call with this team. And then let me bring in that person because I didn't realize you were going to have that question. I just know the rate card.
Right.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
It makes everybody's lives. It's like if we're, as the management company, committing to nimble, small, hardworking teams, understanding multiple products. Like that's one of my key issues too with like the property management systems. You hear all the time that their sales team, they're like, oh, we have like 80 plus products, so I can't possibly know them all. I'm like, do you know how many products we're expected to know the management company side?
Make flashcards.
Flashcards. I love that. These flashcards, yes. Amazing. I mean, like it can't be an excuse. Be like, they're asking about this, right? There's got to be AI for that too now, right? Like, come on.
Really, that is like mind blowing. How can you?
It is. And like, wait, I have to know all the products. Why don't you have to know all the products? You're selling the product.
It's your product.
Yeah, it just baffling.
I think it's also a red flag if they're not asking you any questions. Like I've had a few demos where I've just sat there and then they talk at me the whole time, and then I just pull out my phone and I'm like, I don't care anymore, because you're not even asking about what do I need.
Yes, exactly. Ask, engage, like have a conversation, and don't like and the operator should be transparent, right? Like be transparent with them in those conversations about like, again, what you don't know, what you are trying to learn, what your experience has been in recent implementations, what your pain points have been. And then on the supplier side, write those down, because if those pain points come up in your implementation, one of the quickest ways to lose trust with that client. Because if they said, hey, this really happened in this implementation, made it really difficult for us as a company to come back from, and we really need to make sure that the next implementation that doesn't happen. And then it happened. And then, and they're like, oh, we didn't know that would happen. And then, but that's the quickest way, because it's like the operators, if we're transparent in that, it's like we're doing that from a place of vulnerability and just saying, we really need your help, So, yeah.
So kind of wrapping up just a little bit, what are some takeaways you want people to remember when it comes to vendor partnerships and just how we can really make the most of those connections.
Yeah. So build a bridge of communication, and ask about things that might not be translating apples to apples. Try to find your apples to apples verbiage, language. Take your time. Don't rush. Yes, we are in a fast-paced industry. We are in a high stress industry, and everything seems like a fire drill. But on both sides, we have to kill the fire drill. And I think in order for us to be more strategic. So I think that take time, take a step back, take a breath, right? I told somebody once, I'm like, it's an apartment. They're apartments. It's not rocket science. It's not brain surgery. Yes, it's important. I'm not saying it's not important, but like to have the level of stress that we have in our industry right now, it's just dumb. I don't even know how else to say it. It's just,
I remember like stressing out over things that would be assigned to me, and then everything was a fire drill. And then my boss would say to me, well, is the pricing okay on the website? Okay, great. Then it's not a life or death emergency. It's all good. Like
right,
that was the only
exactly.
thing. Just like, is pricing good? Okay, we're good. It's fine.
Exactly. It's like literal fires, right? Is a fire drill.
Yeah.
And then like as long as people can rent an apartment or, like but everything else, it's just like, okay, like, yes, like life is full of expectations. And I think it's like putting yourself in a spot where you can say, okay, what are my actual priorities? And then with the the supplier operator relationship, just saying like, I know you have a lot of expectations. I have a lot of expectations. Let's do this together in a way that will help us both be successful long term. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to get a deal done this month, maybe not this year. It will mean that we are establishing relationships and partnerships for the long run, the long haul. And that's what we all need.
I think that is I've heard this so many times, but in our industry, it's so relational. And I've seen people try to take that out of the sales equation and just flop, because there's no way that you're going to make a sale. Like the sales cycle is long. It depends on what you're selling, but a lot of times it's longer in this industry because you have to form those partnerships and really be able to provide that service.
Yeah. And I think, building more intimate relationships, so smaller group relationships. Yes, I mean, the industry events are still going to happen, things like that. But it's like, if somebody takes you to a fancy dinner with 300 other people and pays for that dinner, that doesn't necessarily mean they're a good partner, right? And so I think it's remembering that too. Like there's a difference in authentic relationships and sales relationships. And I think that that's a whole other episode, but like that I think is key too in our industry, is to try to differentiate between authentic relationships and ones that are solely based on independent outcome.
Yeah. I'm doing an episode later on about red flags with vendor partners. And one of the things it just kind of drove me nuts being on the operator side is like me being introverted. I felt like I would fall into the background a little bit. And a lot of times, the vendor would be selling to my boss because she holds the strings to the purse, but I was the one who was doing the research. So I would a lot of times get ignored or just kind of pushed to the side because they were like not really selling to me. And then the partners that really did take the time to kind of get me out of my shell, those are the ones where I was like, oh, I really like you. Okay, let me dig into that product. Like you're not just forgetting about me because I'm the silly little marketing manager. Like,
yes, exactly. And really like respecting people and their perspective and their like, I love that you're doing that. I'm not huge in the social scene. And so I think sometimes people are like, Angela, who? And I'm like, hey, like I'm building things and I'm doing things and I'm confident in what I'm able to contribute to either a supplier or an organization or the company that I'm with or the people that I'm with. But just, it's like respecting that and respecting how people operate instead of expecting everyone to operate the way and connect the same way. Yeah.
I know. I wonder if like doing an episode on being an introvert in the business world. Like, I know you said you're an extroverted introvert, but like for me, I'm very introverted. And I think that's such a unique perspective because you pretty much always hear from the extroverts, but not always hear from those introverts because it's just not as fueling for a lot of us.
Well, how brave of you to do a podcast and be an introvert.
Thanks. Yeah,
Super brave, right? Like it's like
but
putting
if
in.
I was in front of people, I would like hide.
I
I'm on
always
my
say
computer.
if I could stand in front of like 5,000 people, I'm more comfortable than I am one-on-one because I feel like I can't tell like their faces. I'm like, oh, I can't tell
Yeah.
if they're judging me.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes
Isn't that
sense.
funny? I know. Okay.
Before we wrap up, I have a bonus question that I ask everybody who comes on my podcast. It does not have to be related to this conversation, but is there a tech tool that you are loving right now and you want to share with the world?
Oh, man, there's so many cool things coming or that are out right now. LinkedIn, if you have LinkedIn Pro Premium, they just did a promotion for Perplexity Pro. So I don't know if you saw that or if your
No.
listeners have LinkedIn Premium, they would have gotten an email for a 1 year subscription to Perplexity Pro. And it is like Google and Chat GPT and what is the image one? Like Playground, like all of these things like all combined. So it's so great. It has saved me I just started using it, but it's already saved me a ton of time in doing some research on things. And you don't get the noise of the Google sponsored listings or like figuring out where the relevant sites are. It literally is like it consolidates things for you. It gives you high level overview of what multiple sites are saying.
Oh,
Um,
that.
so you don't have to go, okay, what's on this site? Okay, go to the next one.
Yeah,
What's on
because I
this
feel like with Google, I'll read it and then I'm like, that's not really the answer I'm looking for. I
Right,
gotta
exactly. This totally is, it's amazing. So Perplexity
have
Pro.
to try that.
There's a free Perplexity, but like the Pro is what LinkedIn just offered the premium members. So
That's
if you missed
amazing.
out, if you're a premium member and you ignored that email,
Check your inbox.
hopefully they offer it again.
Yes, I know. Well, thank you so much for coming on and joining me. We'll have to do this again. Where
Yeah.
can my listeners connect with you and just learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah. So my website is Why Not Consulting, but it's WYNOT consulting.com, or find me on LinkedIn, Angela Flick, and all of my information's there. And you can book a meeting with me from there as well. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you.